Fire Sword Chapter 29 Innocence Lost. Sinon took Yui flying first thing after breakfast the next morning. The daughter of Kirito and Asuna was physically weak, but her magic remained strong, so her shining white wings were more than capable of curing her thinning body. Shino's yellow wings glowed softly as she rose into the air, off the ship's deck, Yui holding her hand as they took off. As they left, Shino looked back to see Kazuto looking up at them with grim eyes. He gave her a slight wave, but said nothing as he watched them go. She smiled back at him, even though she could feel a pit growing in her stomach. She didn't want him to know how much this terrified her, but he had done more than enough to help her with this. Yui needed her help now. She would not turn back from that. Kazuto watched the girls fly away for a long time before he turned and walked back across the deck without a word. Out of the corners of his eyes, he saw Robin smiling and talking with Lucina, as well as Suguha looking through a book with her friend Riken, the shepherd's recognized windmaster. Another sight that surprised him was that of Sachi sitting on a crate talking to Robin and Lucina's son, Marth. He stopped to pay more attention, as he was surprised to see Sachi interacting with anyone outside her usual group, which consisted of the others from Earth. She wasn't doing much of the talking, but she was smiling consistently, a rare occurrence for her. Also, Marth seemed to be more vibrant in his movements than Kazuto remembered. Although he hadn't spent much time with the boy, he knew him to be, from what Robin told him anyway, that the boy was a quiet, reserved sort, though he did display an ability to rally those around him on the battlefield. What's going on with those two? He wondered aloud. Wow, you really are dense, aren't you? Yuki's voice startled the boy, who nearly jumped out of his skin as the other Alfheim warrior came up behind him. Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. It's okay, he gasped. You just caught me off guard. What do you mean about me being dense? Asuna talks about how you never had a clue she was falling for you, but I couldn't really believe it until now. The smaller girl grinned. Although, she also says it's a good thing, because you never noticed the other girls hitting on you, too. Kazuto blanked. Yuki burst out laughing, followed by the words, Wow, this is amazing! You really are clueless! She kept laughing, much to his discomfort. Now you're just being rude, he grumbled. Sorry, I couldn't help it, she laughed. I'll get right to it, and I'll put it in a way that you can understand. Despite his protest, she grabbed his hand and aimed his gaze so that he was looking at Sachi and Marth again. You see that? The more observant of us call what they're doing now flirting. You know, boy meets girl. Huh? He said, still confused for a moment. Then it clicked and his eyes widened. Oh, I get it. Took you long enough. Yuki giggled. How in the world did you end up marrying Asuna? You're so clueless. Well, she saved my life and then we spent the night together, he mumbled absent-mindedly. But she punched me a couple of times because I didn't get that. He suddenly reddened and sputtered, Never mind. And he walked away very quickly, much to Yuki's amusement. Once they'd been flying for some time, Shino finally spoke up so that her younger companion could hear her. Freeing, isn't it? Huh? Came the soft reply. Flying, Shino replied. Just you in the sky, no worries in the world. Makes you almost forget about everything down below, huh? I suppose, the child replied quietly. Her voice was even quieter than usual, Shino noted. Miss Shino, why are we out here? I'm getting tired. Just a little longer, Yui, Shino replied. There's something I need to talk to you about. Her voice caught a bit and her stomach clenched, but she forced herself to remain calm. Did Daddy ask you to talk to me about what happened in Valm? Yui asked quietly. No, I asked him if I could talk to you about it, Shino replied, surprising the young Kirigaya. I know what it's like, doing what you did, Yui. And I don't want you to suffer like I did, which is why I wanted to bring you out here. If you really know what it's like, Yui said, tears springing up in her eyes, then you know nothing anyone says will make it okay. She sagged, but Shino quickly caught her up. I know, she said quietly, speaking past a lump in her throat. Nothing I say can change what happened. We can't make the pain go away. It's something that will stay there forever. Yui curled into a little ball, shivering and crying. She weighed almost nothing, Shino realized. She was on the point of being emaciated. But, Shino said quietly, you can learn to live with the pain. You can find things that make living through it worthwhile. The pain may leave scars, but they'll fade with time. You just have to find something, or someone, to shoulder your burdens with. You can either let the wounds stay fresh and let your life bleed out with them, or... For a moment, Yui said nothing. Then in a barely audible voice, she asked, Or you can find a way to bandage the wounds, live life despite them. Sinon answered, What you did doesn't make you any less human than anyone else unless you let it. Your father taught me that. We can live a life just as fulfilling as anyone else's if we want. Just don't ever do it alone. Yui said nothing, but she leaned into Shinon's embrace tighter. Sinon looked down at the small girl in her arms and wondered, Is this what being a mother feels like? Thank you, Yui cried softly. I just don't want to see you make the mistake of isolating yourself like I did, Sinon replied. You're too precious to Kirito and Asuna for me to let that happen. I've really worried them, haven't I? Yui sniffled. Yes, Sinon nodded. But it's not too late to start recovering, Yui. If I was able to come to terms with what I did, I'm sure you can too. Because I'm younger? No. Because you have a family that loves you and is willing to stand by you, no matter what, she answered. And because I believe you're stronger than I am, Yui. When the girl looked up at her, she smiled and said, You have your mother's courage and your father's heart. I think you'll live a wonderful life, Yui Kirigaya. You do? She sniffed, wiping at her eyes. I do, Sinon nodded. Just live at your own pace and no one else's. There's not a time limit on the healing process. Just live and let those around you help however they can. Hey, Crom, Robin said as he sat down at the table where his commander and Kirito were sitting at. I've got a request to make. Name it, old friend. Crom grinned. Unless you wanted a pay raise? The three men laughed a bit as Robin pulled out a chart of the ocean area they were sailing in. No, though I might want one now that you mention it. Robin grinned mischievously. I'm letting you court my daughter, Crom said, though it was only half jokingly this time. I think my finances are quite secure now that I think about it, Robin said quickly, and Crom grinned in satisfaction. But I wanted to talk to you about this, actually. He pointed to a smaller island on the map. I would like to stop here, if we could. Crom eyed the map for a moment before he said, It's not terribly out of the way. As a matter of fact, we'd only be delayed by 2 days in total if we spent only one night there. It might be good for us to get off the ships, but why this island? It's uninhabited. That's not what Anna told me, Robin countered. According to her intelligence, the island is inhabited by a warrior with the strength of 10 men. There was a stretch of silence at the table. Tell me you didn't pay her for that intel, Kirito said with a shake of his head. In his opinion, he'd rather have dealt with Argo than Anna and her family for information. She charged twice as much for riddles and obscure dealings, whereas Argo actually gave you the information you paid her for. I did, out of my own savings, Robin replied quickly before Crom could ask if he used the war funds. She was able to tell me that it was this island specifically, and there's more if you want to hear about it. A guy with the strength of 10 men, Kirito asked skeptically. Says the one with fairy wings coming out of his back? Crom said with a raised eyebrow. Go on, Robin. What else did Anna tell you? Well, there's not much to go on, but apparently this man has a sword that once rivaled Falchion in power. Robin continued. The name of it is Ragnell. And the man himself said to have been descended from Ike. The Grail mercenary? Crom asked, sitting up in surprise. The very same, Robin nodded. Who's this Ike guy? Kirito asked curiously. He was the most powerful swordsman in his day, Crom answered. No one could face him in battle and live, apparently. And if this descendant of his even has 1/10 of his power, that's a pretty big if, Kirito said with a frown. Where'd Anna get this information from? She said she got it from a new recruit, Robin replied with a shrug. She didn't give me a name, but she did mention that she was a friend of yours, Kirito. I thought maybe one of your friends had found out about it during our stay in Volm. No, it wasn't one of my friends, Kirito frowned harder. If they found out about something like that, they'd have told me, not Anna. Not unless there was money to be made, a familiar voice said from nearby, one that caused Kirito to stiffen and widen his eyes. No way, he breathed. His eyes shot over to a barrel, and he darted over to pry the lid off and reveal a brown-hooded small figure. I should have known. Hey there, Kibo, the girl said as she hopped out of the barrel. Stow away! Crom exclaimed. Relax, I know her, Kirito sighed. Shaking his head at the girl, he said, And you wonder why people called you the Rat. I don't gotta wonder, Argo replied cheekily. It's because people are rude. How'd you get up here? Kirito asked heavily. Pay up, Argo grinned as she held out a hand. She looked just as she had in Aincrad, complete with 3 red stripes on each of her cheeks. Without missing a beat, the black swordsman slapped a gold coin in her hand and said, "That's all you're getting for this one. Spill it." "Had a weird dream a few weeks ago." Argo shrugged as she pocketed the money. "Some glowing dragon lady said you were in trouble. Didn't give me her name, but she said you and the gang needed all the help you could get. I heard from the grapevine you'd gone missing IRL, so I decided to come here and lend a hand. I spent some time keeping an ear to the ground, gathering info where I could before I found out you were about to leave town. Snuck on board this ship, kept listening in on you people, trying to figure out as much as I could before I decided to say hello." "You know there's no guarantee we can go back, right?" Kirito said, concerned. Yeah, I know," she shrugged. "But I couldn't let you get back into a save the world game without your primary source of intel, you know?" Kirito's mouth opened and closed several times in surprise before he said, "Well, thanks, Argo. Glad to have you here. How'd you get on board without being spotted?" "Yes, I would like to know that as well," Robin frowned. "And how do I know there aren't more of you in hiding?" 10 gold, Argo grinned. "Never ask Argo a question if you expect it to be free." Kirito rolled his eyes. "And she's like me, or at least how I used to be. She works solo, so there's no way she helped anyone else get on the ship. As for how she got here," he slapped 2 gold coins in her hand and folded his arms to wait for an answer. "I dumped a barrel that one orange-haired guy in the street when he was chasing some kids, so the candy in there wouldn't go to waste. I gave it to some kids." She grinned. "He never checked twice to see if the candy was missing." "He will eventually," Robin said, paling. "Hey, is he okay?" Argo asked, cocking her head at the tactician. "You've obviously never seen guys go through a sugar withdrawal," Crom said shakily. "Well, I heard some of the people talking about it," Argo shrugged, "but I thought they were exaggerating. People usually do. If anything, their descriptions probably didn't do justice." Robin shuddered. Argo looked up at Kirito, who shrugged. "I couldn't tell you," he said, "but I know Crom and Robin aren't liars. Maybe you should have figured out a different way on board." He looked like he was going to say more, but just then Asuna ran up to the 4 of them. "Sinon and Yuri are back!" she exclaimed. Kazuto bolted upright and made a dash for the main deck before anyone else could react. The 2 girls touched down on the deck, Yui holding Shino's hand and stumbling a bit when she touched down. She was still weak, so the older girl had to help her regain her balance. When she had steadied herself, Yui looked up to see her father looking down at her, though he glanced at Shino for a second. Knowing that his fear was eating him alive, she reached up to him with both hands and said, "I love you, Daddy." He gathered her up in his arms and murmured into her dark tresses, "I love you too, Yui, my sweet little girl." He looked over at Shino, who smiled slightly at him and nodded once. "Thank you, Sinon," he added. "Of course, Kirito," she nodded. "She's a very special girl." "I know she is," he said as he refastened his grip on his daughter. He turned to see his wife walking up to him, and he smiled at her. She smiled back, tears of relief streaming down her face as she hugged him, and squeezing Yui in between them. The little girl was breathing deep and evenly, a sign of a peaceful sleep. "She's going to be okay now," Kazuto said as Asuna stroked her little face. "Thank you, Kirito," she sighed. "Don't thank me," he said as he jerked his head at Shino. "Thank her." "Shino, thank you so much," Asuna said as she bowed from her waist to the other girl. "I was glad to," the brown-haired girl nodded as Asuna straightened. "I just couldn't stand to see her suffer like I did. She won't be the same as before, but she'll be okay, as long as you're there for her." "We will be," Kazuto vowed. "Her innocence might be lost, but we don't love her any less for it." Asuna nodded her affirmation to the statement, and Shino smiled at them with a trace of tears in her eyes. "You're such a beautiful family," she said softly. "Don't ever forget that." So, this chapter. Okay. So I wanted some serious stuff to happen, clearly, with Yui trying to come to terms with the trauma that she endured and Volm having had to kill somebody, even if it was mandated by necessity. Did I say that right? Huh. But in any case, I also thought it was time for a little bit of humor to come into this, because, things have been pretty grim, serious. Even though they're relaxed, they're going home, there hasn't been a whole lot of humor happening, which is why I decided to have Argo come in at this point, which, anytime Argo shows up, that's going to be really funny. I had fun with the way that she got onto the ship, the fact that she was hiding out from them for a couple weeks. It's like, I'm here, but nobody knows it. Can't put a number on that. And of course, her charging Kirito for just about everything that he wants he wants to know from her. I always loved their interactions are they just almost don't exist in the anime. I really like how they happen in not only the light novels, but especially in the video games. There's this playful banter that happens between them, and I really like getting to touch on that at least a little bit. So that's kind of where that came from. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to make sure that you're getting the notifications from when these new chapters are coming out. Please share with your friends. I really hope that I'll see you guys around for the next one. Take care. Red Swordsman out.